It still was like my first year when I was working at Marvel, and things were working out pretty well. I was doing this book called Ultimate Spider-Man, and it took off, and the relationship was very fortuitous right away. And they came to me with some projects, not to be braggy, but they came to me with some projects and said, you should do this. And Elektra was on the top of the list, and I was like, and they could see it because Elektra went, oh no, 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 I'm not gonna write Elektra. And they're like, why not? I'm like, no, no, that's Frank's, I can't do it. They go, you didn't even blink to start Spider-Man over from scratch, but you won't write Elektra. I go, no, 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 no. And they literally started calling me names. And I went, just stop asking. I'm not. Then they started writing me because they see it on my face, and I really did want to do it. But I was being a big baby. But I went home. I was actually in New York, but I went back to my hotel that night, and I literally have the story in my head. And once you get the story in your head, and I totally was not going to do it, but once you have a story, it's really hard to come up with excuses to yourself why not to tell the story. So yeah, and the reason I did say to do is it was far enough away from Frank's material, because I think that's the thing that most offends me, and I'm sure Frank is people just rehashing his story over and over again. It's kind of like a cover band. So we came up with something unique and new, and also the artist that I was offered was doing something very unique that I thought, these characters always seem to lend themselves to experimentation, and here we had something that was, I thought worth publishing. I wanted to write not a redemption story, because that's kind of the trap, really, of that kind of thing. Is to redeem her is to ruin her, the essence of her, but I wanted to tell a story about someone who has a nebulous morality. I thought it was fascinating, without answering for it. I just wanted to show, and what I set up was a large canvas for which to put her a part of. It's a very large S.H.I.E.L.D. story, and I put her into it to show how with these larger global wartime stories, nebulous morality is a plus. So I put her somewhere where her abilities and her mentality was an actual bonus to the story, as opposed to, wrestling against, because the only other place she works is against Matt Murdock's, morality and religious upbringing, and she's like this opposite, these two things that rub up against each other that makes interesting drama. And once you take Matt Murdock out of the equation, what can we do with her? So that's what this story was about, was putting her somewhere where her nebulous morality was a plus to the drama. Because it had been so long since she'd been in a comic book, it was our obligation to get you up to speed a little bit in those first few pages. And I said, okay, you know what? We actually haven't heard her story from her own mouth. So a little bit of her perspective on it is interesting. So then when we follow her and her perspective, the rest of the world kind of know where she stood. So that way we're doing it without just retelling Frank's material. But also the other thing that I'm reminded of that we did in that story was, it's very interesting that she's been dead. She died and came back to life. And that question in my mind is, what is the world like to someone who's died and is now living? And if she's dead, if she died, why does she kill people? That's very that's once that question was in my head. That's why I had to take the series to start with. Okay, now I have a question to answer. Now the book's about something. For some reason, when a woman is seen as a three-dimensional character, it's still like an oddity. It's very bizarre. But Elektra goes a step further, because she's a female lead who has been through nothing that the audience can actually relate to. No one in the audience goes, oh man, I died and came back to life, and boy, I hate when that happens. So you have that unique experience of following a character along who you can't relate to on some level, or you can relate to up to that point. And the other character that I thought of, who is this character, is the man with no name in the Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood movies, and that was my inspiration for how to handle her. She's the embodiment of revenge. So So that's what I wanted to get across. A lot of Frank's work actually had me looking up stuff and getting into it because it was my first introduction to a lot of things. So for years I've been reading ninja stories and reading ninja lore and what have you, and samurai lore too, and Ninja versus Samurai, which is what we did there. And that's why we brought the Silver Samurai into the story as well, just to have that samurai versus ninja, Marvel story. If you read any great samurai stories from years ago, it's always the ninja versus the samurai, and you're like, all right, ninja versus samurai, cool, let's do that. And I was all happy when no one else had done it. I was like, yay, I was like, I thought of it first. It was still my first year at Marvel, and there's this, you can't believe you're there. You can't believe you're getting to write Marvel comics, and you tend to want to shove as many toys of your favorite toys from the toy box. It's the toy box of 4,700 characters. And they open the toy box and go take out whatever you want, and you go, oh my god, I can write whatever I want, and you tend to shove too many things into the story just to say, when they kick you out and send you back to Indie Comics, go, I wrote Nick Fury once. Yeah, it was awesome. There's a tendency, and I do, looking back on the story, I would have taken out about half of those things. If they would have told me, by the way, you get to stay, I would have taken about half those things and just had a lot more kung fu and action, and it was way brainier than it needed to be, and a lot more with the political intrigue was way over me trying to, I don't know, just shove all this stuff in. Chuck had taken a lengthy break from comics. He had actually, years before, had done some erotic comics, I guess is the right word. But they're actually very good erotic comics. They're kind of like the precursor for MTV's Undressed, just like college kids doing naughty stuff. I was already working with Alex Maleev on Daredevil, whose work is also very computer generated, and it creates a unique look using computer generated, and I'm very, very high on that the people who find a unique way to express themselves with a computer, because most computer stuff looks exactly like computer stuff. And when people find a way to do something else with it, I get very jazzed up. So with Chuck had this unique idea, and I was like, yeah, I would buy a book that looked like this. I wanted to see, anything that looks new, show me something new. So yeah, it was a very interesting experiment to put this on Elektra. Nathan has a very unique expressive palette, which I was very, very happy about. I'm a big, big proponent on any of my books. The colorist is an equal storyteller with the artist and the writer. He's the cinematographer. I'm a big fan of the art of cinematography and the art of silent storytelling, and bold color palettes, whether they're soft or primary, excite me a great deal, just a tremendous amount. So when I saw his work, I was very, very jazzed, because it added, it took the cold computer art and added a layer of warmth to it and created a totally unique experience. When we announced Elektra, the first thing everyone said was, she's dead, Frank Miller killed her, leave her alone, stop it. And I'm like, no, Frank Miller brought her back to life twice. That was the weird thing. I even, it was so loud when we announced it that I actually went back to look. I'm like, am I wrong? Because you're sitting there going, so I went and looked back at the thing. Well, no, she came back twice.